If I may bang the gavel on the block. I'd like to call a meeting to order. Start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll go from there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Solicitor Schultes to recognize the executive session that we had, and I apologize for our running late.
So Borough Council had an executive session from 6:30 p.m. to about 7:07 p.m. To discuss a number of matters. First, the land use appeal for 213 Primrose LLC, the pending litigation, Jeffrey Crape versus Borough of Hanover. We also discussed a non-criminal complaint investigation report and the zoning ordinance enactment process, all under section 708A 4 and 5. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, sir. Do we have any public comment from either those here in the physical audience or those in the, I'll call it, digital audience? None here physically. Would you please check the online?
If you're joining us via Zoom, you're able to unmute yourself. If you'd like to address council, you just click the microphone icon.
Okay, well, I guess that narrows that down. Item 3, the consent agenda, items A through I. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
And a second? Are any questions? No questions? With that, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Pardon me. Item 4, our finance director, Mr. Shelton. You're on the grill for your first time, I guess, in this, and you're amongst friends here, so
We'll
have
see
little
after
to
the
no
night into this.
have little to no fear. We're your friend until you go wrong, and then we'll get you. But Mr. Shelton's going to go through our 21 audited financials, our 22 year-to-date, and some 23 preliminary budget proposals.
Right. Okay. The council should have actually received the 21 audit report. It's a combined document, the audit report, as well as a couple documents that I want to discuss. The first letter is actually from our auditor, Clifton Larson Allen, to the council, really describing the scope for the audit, the basis, accounting estimates, and our financial disclosures. In that same document, stapled to the back, is the management representation letter from the finance director and our borough administrator, which verifies our responsibilities to the auditor, that we gave them all the proper disclosures, financial information, and provide them access to our staff and records for their field work to verify the results and controls. The next document is a single page to the council. It's something I just wanted to discuss a little bit. And what this is a internal control weakness notice.
That's this page.
This is a single page. Further down, it says material, you'll see material weakness. Through our own internal review of our capital leases against our fixed asset, basically normal blocking and tackling when you're trying to look at your results, We discovered that a fire truck purchased back in 2014 for $1.5 million was not on our asset list of the borough. That fire truck is titled in the name of the borough. I don't know why it wasn't on our books and records. Maybe there was a misunderstanding that it was ownership by the fire commission. Regardless, we brought it to the auditor's attention. With that,
So we found it, they didn't.
we found it. In fact, and nobody for the past 8 years has found it. So it's been sitting there for the past 8 years.
Maybe it wasn't big enough.
Although the lease itself was recorded on our books, it's just the asset was never added and the depreciation was never recorded. So on a cumulative basis, that's $442,000 of depreciation expense that we actually had to record for the 21 fiscal year, about $55,000 a year. This is non-cash expense. It's not impacts us from a cash standpoint. It also did not affect our opinion on the audit. It is considered a material weakness, and obviously we're going to put additional controls in place to ensure something like that doesn't happen again. But I wanted to make sure that the council was aware of that we addressed it. The auditors have, given us the okay to move forward. But it's something that is in our audit report. It's in note 23. You'll see the same information, but it becomes our public record. Again, it's whatever the reason for it is an oversight. It's been fixed, and we shouldn't have any issues going forward with that.
And we've been making the payments, so it isn't, all the monetary aspects of it are reflected in our financials.
Yeah, and no one's going to take it back from us for non-payment, so.
Right, so, we'd hate to have a fire and not have the truck because it was repoed. Would there be a reason, or I guess the question would be, is when is the last time we've done an inventory on our fixed assets?
I could not tell you, but it is on my agenda to do a complete inventory verification. That's
Okay, but what about
tall order.
inventory assets?
Everything from the fixed assets to as well reviewing our inventory, because I don't think it's probably ever been done.
Right, I don't ever
My
remember
opinion,
hearing
so.
about it either, and I think it should be.
So that is something that we are going to do.
Okay, thank you.
But inside the audit report itself, you'll see the narrative, the summary from the auditor. Again, it restates the management's responsibilities, and it does give the opinion that our financial information is fairly presented in all aspects, so which is the unqualified, clean opinion that we're looking for, which is a good thing. Just sort of really quickly, the summary highlights, it was definitely 21 was a good year, other than the cumulative catch-up for the depreciation. Revenues were up over the prior year. Consolidated expenses were decreased. It would have been a little bit higher decrease if we didn't have to book the 442. General fund balance had increased. The borough maintained its Moody's rating, which is good, AA3, which is a very high-quality rating, just 3 down from the top rating. You have to go down 3 more to get to below the investment grade, so we're in good shape there. If you have any questions when you review the audit report, please let me know. I just want to thank the council for leading the borough and the staff for executing all the various activities that led to such a positive result for 2021. Just apologize that it's much later. It should have been out in April of this year, but it predates my joining the borough. So if there's any questions on the 21 audits, I won't.
Just procedural, Jim, your expectation would be April of 2023 we're looking at this wrap up.
Yes, that's the normal, because we also have compliance filings with DCED and other regulatory authorities, which we had to file extensions or estimates.
Right.
So now that the audit report's out, we're catching all that up to get us all back in compliance with all the discussions. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to move on actually to slide 4. Just to look at kind of where we're going for 2022. This is really kind of a snapshot where we are as of 8/31. We've from the revenue side, we've realized about 74% of our revenues year-to-date. We are projecting a surplus in our projected revenues, primarily is due to the ARPA grant, which is kind of a windfall for us. Tipping fees are up, but you can see that's some of the highlighted where the licensing permits are slightly behind budget. Grants and contribution donations are also running behind. But at this moment, we again expect the variance to be about $3.2 million ahead of what was budgeted for 2022. And again, these are the general fund, governmental funds that we're talking about here on the revenue side. To slide 5, which is the expenditures, the expenses for the governmental funds. We've expended about 65% of the $18.4 million consolidated expenses that have been realized. We're projecting right now, all things considered, to exceed our budget by about $315,000. I think the budgeting originally was about $348,000. I think we budgeted a deficit last year, so we're not too far off in that numbers. Where you can see where we have favorable results, we're actually running behind on the public safety expenses, and we're behind on the solid waste. Our capital outlays are higher than budgeted.
Why are we behind? Do you have any idea?
I do not. Why, other than it could be a timing.
Okay.
Hopefully the trash will pick up as we get closer to the end of the year.
No
So
pun.
it's all driven.
Forgive the pun,
No
yeah.
pun intended,
No
right?
pun intended, right? More garbage, the better off for us. The capital outlays, you can see, is running ahead of budget. I think, a lot of that's attributed to the timing issues that we've had in the past with the COVID and the supply chain issues. And one of the challenges we have here really is ensuring that we control our expenditures from one fiscal year to the next. If it's something that has not been incurred for a fiscal year and needs to be relooked at, it doesn't automatically flow over into the next fiscal year. We need to look at it a little bit more closely to see if there needs to be change in the estimate. We get those surprises if something spills over into the next fiscal year, or we pull something back for the next fiscal year into the current year because we're overburning on a project or whatever the situation is. So we have to be very careful with that. So the capital outlays are a little bit ahead. The repairs, same thing. I think we're projected to be 1.7 million versus the 1.5 million, so about $217,000 over what was budgeted.
So we're spending more on repairs than we had anticipated.
Repairs and maintenance, and that might just be,
Which I find somewhat troubling because I don't know what the average age of the fleet of vehicles that we have is, but my sort of understanding is that it's newer or lesser than it was, which would lead me to believe that we would, in an overall sense, have less repairs, but I have no data to
This is
to
for
base that.
roads and
yeah, this is actually repairs.
This is actual
Yeah.
This is actually
infrastructure,
repairs.
not vehicles.
This is not
Oh,
the
I'm
capital
sorry,
outlay.
pardon me.
Yeah, not the
Okay.
capital outlays.
Sorry.
Finance administration is my area with the BSF Consulting we had on board, is ahead of what was budgeted. UCC code enforcement, I don't have an explanation for that. But again, right now, we're predicting about a $315,000 over budget for our governmental expenses for 2022. Go on to next slide. I just want to talk assumptions for 2023 a little bit. What we have here is just a draft. We've gotten input from the directors and estimates that are currently available from information that we have. We expect refinement over the next 30 days. My goal is to provide a balanced budget to the council in October. That's when we really need to be very close to a finalized budget. Compensation rates for 2023 have not been finalized. I know we're still negotiating some union agreements. So we did use a 3% escalation in our estimate for compensation for '23. And also for our benefit costs, We used an 8% escalation. We should be getting more information from our insurance and benefit providers beginning in October, but we needed a placeholder, so we settled on about an 8% increase in benefit costs.
And we're not group rated, we're community rated, correct? Because we don't have enough mass in any one group to be individually rated.
Right. So again, I just want to make sure everybody knew that it was, obviously, when we get to a final budget, the numbers could change.
Right.
All the capital outlays and the capital projects are preliminary. It's something we're going to be going back in the next few weeks to the stakeholders to really hammer out, what the needs are. We know there are timing issues and delays and supplier delays, but hopefully we can get a little bit closer to where we think we're going to really land for next year. Right now, I don't have any current plans to expand our general obligation bonds and debt for '23. We did actually meet with PFM today to really discuss some of the planning for if the council were to move forward with the new building construction and timing of when we'd have to do funding for that. It's not anything that the borough can actually handle out of their operating account for such a large project. But again, we're having that discussion, but at this point, unless I hear otherwise, I don't plan on having any additional general obligation debt in '23.
Okay.
Slide 6. This is just another snapshot of where, for real estate taxes, we had talked in the council previously about what the impact's going to be to our taxpayers for the average home of $155,000. We had proposed a 0.03 mil increase in the real estate taxes. Last time an update has happened, or increase had happened, was 2015. The average impact could be about, I think it was a little under $47, $46.50, somewhere in that range.
Per year.
Per year.
So it's less than $50 per year.
Less than $50, but we're also proposing elimination, or actually a reduction of the per capita tax down to a 0 rate due to the unsuccessful ability for us to collect the money. It's only about $35,000 a year in benefit, but perception.
To Jim's point, if everybody remembers, we talked about this numerous times. It's like $5 a person, or 10. I think it's $5 for a kid or 10 for an adult. And our cost of collection, it pretty much equals or exceeds that of what we collect. It's somewhat ridiculous.
But, perception for the household with two adults would get an adjustment on the per capita and the increase of the real estate. So perception would be it's not a big increases that it would affect. So that hopefully would come over positive. And as you can see, for the real estate taxes, the borough is low on the totem pole as far as the benefit they receive from the real estate taxes.
Yes, schools.
Okay, on to slide 7. This really gives you a kind of a trending. I wanted to show you where things were from the tax standpoint. We're with the $3 million increase, we're expecting a little over $6 million in real estate taxes. We did reach out to York Adams Tax Bureau. They spent a lot of time in gathering information and data and statistics for York County, and they gave us some input on our earned income taxes. So we think we're going to have an increase up to about $1.9 million in earned income taxes next year. Again, assuming that we don't have a mass exodus of unemployment and people exiting the borough. So that's a positive. Business privilege taxes.
So the earned income tax we split with the school district, we get a 0.5 percentage point there, correct?
Yes, this is our take. This is our take on it, correct. Business privilege taxes, we left flat because I know we also had changed the basis for rental income for the business privilege taxes, and we're working on some refund process for a small subsection of citizens that have come back to us. So we left that flat, and then with the rising real estate borrowing rates, again, we heard the Federal Reserve raising another 75 basis points on the interest rates, that we anticipate that real estate transfer taxes are going to degrade. But overall, increase year over year for the real estate, the 511 taxes for 2023. And this just gives you a depiction down at the bottom, of really, visually, where the biggest benefit is, which is the real estate taxes. Going on to slide 8, really the governmental revenues by type. Really, these are specifically at the line item level. You can see that the top 3, which make up about 62% of the total revenues with the real estate, our trash business and sanitation and earned income taxes are the top ones. We expect the licensing and permits I talked about for 22 that we're behind budget, but with the PMCA, probably using the wrong acronym there, we do expect the permits to go up. It'll be more of a pass-through, but we'll see that increase for 2023. Any questions on the expected revenues for 23? Okay.
When you say sanitation, the trash,
Trash.
we probably should keep it consistent then between the revenue stream versus the expenditure where we have solid waste collection and disposal.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, we'll have to go into the general ledger and sync up those descriptions, so thank you for that. On to the expenditures. You'll see the overall expenditures here for 23 are exceeding the proposed revenues. Again, we haven't scrubbed the biggest part of the budget that we need to focus a little bit more on, which is the capital outlay. Between the capital outlay and the debt services, that makes up about 17% of our expenditures for the governmental side. So it is something we're looking very closely at. If we did not have debt service and the capital outlay, obviously we'd be running at a surplus. But the debt service includes what we already have obligations on, as well as any capital projects where we're going to be capitalized leases. That does not include any additional general obligation debt for 2023. All right, on to slide 10. This really just gives you a view of the expenditures by type. The majority of our expenses, not a surprise to anybody on the council, is our salary, wages, and benefits. And employer taxes that make up 52.4% of the expenditures.
Shelton?
Yes.
How do we calculate the water sewer income and revenues and all that stuff? Is any of that,
Well, that's based off of billings. That's more of a user fee type. The trash collection and the transfer station is based off of usage. So we bill directly for garbage, and we collect a point of
how
sale.
does that show on these charts though?
Well,
That's not in these. These
It's
are
not in
governmental
these.
expenditures. Those are enterprise expenditures, water, sewer, trash.
right, what,
Go as a.
Well, trash is not an enterprise.
trash is actually part of the governmental. So
Pardon me.
the
Okay.
garbage, yeah, the garbage and the transfer station are part of our governmental funds.
2.4.
But as
Expenditure
Scott had
is
said,
4.
the kind of the for-profit part of our business, which is the proprietary, or sometimes enterprise, sometimes they call them enterprise funds. A lot of terminology kicked around, but again, it's really the private business is a different set of
Jim,
funds.
just on that subject, council, a previous council, it used to all be lumped together. I think that's really speaking to the question. It was determined that those funds are just so say, regulated by council, they are self-funding, they are handled differently, so we made a concerted effort to pull them out and treat them separately. So so
And
it's
the-
not lumped into the same.
And the finance organizations or the rating organizations also consider them separately, the debt and the associated revenue, because they're self-funding. Whereas,
Why was the garbage left in?
I don't know exactly. That's a good question. Jim, you want to,
I did,
why is the garbage kind of lumped in with the general fund expenses and not in with the enterprise funds?
well, I don't have an answer why it's there, but it's been part of the governmental funds for some period of time. I guess it's something.
Slush fund.
It's something I guess we could spin off into a separate if we wanted to, but it's just stayed right now with.
One of the thoughts were that since water and sewer go outside of the borough lines, that we do collect, say, non-governmental funds, enterprise funds, if you will, but our trash does not go outside the lines, albeit transfer station accepts from outside the lines, but it's still inside
Majority,
the borough
yeah.
exclusively versus part in,
Let me,
part out.
let me throw this in. I would love to see us be able to pick up some additional outside of borough
Okay.
trash business, but that would be the.
Jim, did we throw you off enough?
No. And I agree with you, Chris.
Well,
with
we've
the-
had this discussion.
It looks
but,
like a
yeah.
fee-for-service type
Right.
business. Why is it separate as an enterprise? But maybe it gets large enough as if we expand it, they'll spin that out. Slide 11, I wanted, this is probably a different type of slide than you've probably seen, but I wanted to give it an appreciation really on a kind of cash point of view for the governmental funds. One of the things that we're doing, not only here in the governmental funds, but also with the proprietary funds, is for every one of the funds, we're going to have a separate capital projects fund. And the reason we're going to have that is to provide more visibility on the capital outlays and what
So
the
it'll be
needs are.
standalone.
Sort of a
silos of
standalone,
sorts.
so, and we can see where we're subsidizing the capital projects funds, either from the fund, our funds itself, or if it's outside for general obligation debt or funding. So we want to have that visibility. So that's why you're seeing sort of like a mismatch here, but I just wanted to kind of walk you through it fairly quickly. Basically, say for the general fund, with the revenues and expenses, again, this is on a cash basis, not on a modified accrual basis. So if you do go back and look at the previous slide, you'll see a different number for the revenues and expenses, but this is just for illustration purposes on a cash basis. We started out with about $15.2 million in cash. That's not fund balance, that's cash. Revenues and expenses, obviously on just a revenue expense basis, we're cash positive. The $2.1 million, $4.6 million, that is the transfer in from the ARPA funds. When we incur the expenses for the fire and police per the instructions of receiving the ARPA funds, those are allowable expenditures that we can offset with the ARPA funds. So what we'll do is we'll be transferring the ARPA funds into the general fund. And then the next line down is we'll be transferring out of the general fund to the capital projects fund. And so for the $3.3 million that we're transferring out, $3 million is transferred to the general projects fund, and the other $363,000 is transferred to the library fund to keep the library's finances straight. So again, if we didn't have to do the transfers, we'd be sitting at about a $975,000 surplus. With the transfers that, we end up about a $248,000 deficit on a cash basis.
Wasn't ARPA around 7 million that we had?
ARPA was about 7.4 million, but we'll be using it in 2022, more than likely, parts of it in 2022. Again, this is a standalone, just illustration. So as far as, don't think about it on a cumulative basis. I just want to give you appreciation for the flow here. So you can see the capital projects fund. So we start out with a small cash balance, revenues associated with that, the expenses associated with the capital outlays and expenditures, the transfer in, we bring the capital projects funds down to zero. And for 23 with the current estimates of the projects. The next column is just the ARPA fund, which is the in and out, again, all balance sheet. to extinguish the funds. So for the amount that we are going to be using for 22 and 23, out of the 7.4, we're using the 2.1, the 2.146 out of the ARPA fund. So we should end up with a cash balance of ARPA at the end of next year, right now at zero. Liquid fuels, I think is pretty self-explanatory, and the library endowment, recreation, and recreation endowment fund are really small potatoes. It's not really worth discussing. But I just want to give you an appreciation for the flow between the funds and the capital project funds primarily on this slide. Slide 12, I really wanted to show the council, what's going to be in the capital projects fund. So we have our general obligation debt, which exists here. The capital leases for the mostly vehicles that we have. We have two that are still not under contract, which is officially, I guess, is the garbage truck and the BOMAG roller paver in the liquid fuels. But the total debt service and capital lease service for the governmental funds is $1.2 million estimated for next year. Now, this is
We have the new roller, BOMAG roller.
That's a request for 2023. As Jim spoke to earlier, a lot of
Okay.
capital items still have to be scrubbed and
Right.
and going down through. We start
Okay.
making our cuts and those kind of things, so we're still very early in that process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just a kind of first blush, so, but I wanted to give you an appreciation and a view. So the next page on 13 continues the capital outlays. You'll see the ERP system that we're trying to replace our 20-plus-year-old KVS system. Other from our IT, increases of hardware and software expenses. Building and facilities, we are doing a roof replacement on this building. We're anticipating that in the first quarter. I know we're planning on replacing the library roof. Because it's going to start later in the year, I just split half of it, and part of it going into 23 and some into 22. We're planning on, if the council approves the phase 2 of the new building projects, we'll incur $704,000 for the formalized plans. I'm probably using the wrong terminology, with Eric can tell. But that's the phase 2 charges. And so that's we're potentially spending about $1.46 million in cash for those building and facilities next year.
So we looking at final design for police and borough in '24, or are we?
That's where I pushed it for this analysis, which was a little dated. It may have changed. We actually met with the architect this morning. It's kind of a moving target, but I'm hoping we'll ratchet everything down by the time we get to the final budget. So we really need to know that. That's the creep I talked about earlier, trying to avoid things spilling into 22 from 21 and things being pulled back into 23 from 24. I just want to try to keep it within the fiscal year. We need to improve our discipline so that we don't have any surprises mid-year. Again, I also have the vehicles we need to replace. And I know I've got the Goodfields capital project in there. I know it's going to be offset by a grant. But combined, on a cash basis, the total capital projects and expenditures will be about $3.5 million in cash next year. From a modified accrual basis, or actually our governmental funds, the actual expense would be less because we do convert it to accrual basis for our disclosure, but on a cash basis, we'd have about $3.5 million out of pocket for capital expenditures before we do any scrubbing or refinement. All right, I'd like to kind of launch now into the proprietary funds, our enterprise funds. Again, these numbers here are based off of just the user fees. There are other revenues that roll up that are miscellaneous revenues, but again, these are just pure user fees. You can see in order of the higher amounts, water being the largest of the revenue streams for the proprietary fund. So at about 18.7 million of user fees expected for next year. Slide 15 is the proprietary funds expenditures for next year. Again, you see a larger expenditure amount over the revenues you saw on the previous slide, but also take in consideration that we do capitalize the capital outlay expenditures, and then we'll hang that up on the balance sheet and depreciate that over its useful life. But on a cash basis, I wanted you to see what the expenditures would be. The debt service and
Jim,
the.
just as an aside, do we, I mean, we don't pay taxes as a governmental entity. We get the benefit of depreciation is only over the likely life of the asset. There's no other real purpose of it, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just and the real reason we produce the financials is it's a requirement for disclosure, so.
Okay, but with the depreciation schedule we use is not necessarily the tax schedule, it's the realistic expected life? or-
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
But the debt service and the capital outlays make up 36.7% of the cash outlays for next year. And the governmental funds, I think, was about 17. So you can see definitely on the proprietary funds, there's even with the potential of the new buildings right now, the proprietary funds have a much larger capital outlay and debt service. Again, if we did take out the debt service and we look at just purely on a revenue and expense basis, obviously we'd have a surplus for the proprietary funds. Slide 16, again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It just gives you an idea of the expenditures, the expenses by function. Salary and benefits make up a good chunk of our expenses. On an individual line item, the professional and contract services are at the top of the.
Our number, 21% is professional/contracted services. Give me like a couple examples of what that might be.
Any of the.
Eric might.
Any of the non-internal labor that we used for any of our projects.
So this would be Gannett Fleming type of stuff.
Yeah,
It's a big nut.
it is big nut.
But this is including the sewer and water, right?
Yes, this is
Well,
everything.
keep in mind the dam.
The dam.
Construction management of the dam alone
Well,
was,
okay, all right.
you know,
That was $1 million just for that.
right.
Yeah.
So that CapEx is in this.
Yes.
Got it. Good point, Chuck. Thank you.
The other thing too, I would offer, we have been trending since I've been here, your reliance on outside engineering stuff has been trending slightly down, and we're trying to wean ourselves where we can. Now, realistically, there are things we're not going to be able to do because we're not staffed for that, but we are
Site development
trending in the right
buildings.
direction to do things, and we outsource to other firms other than Gannett to try and spread it around.
Got it. Thank you.
I mean, code enforcement, right? As far as some of the things that we're using third party for, which are cheaper than internal. So.
Yeah.
Well, this is $4.2 million, so to your point,
Right, but if you
Chuck,
look at
it's
sewer, water, dam,
the dam project, no pun intended.
the big one.
Slide 17, again, this is that view on a cash basis. Again, we created actually a new capital projects fund for, I think, sanitary, sewer, and stormwater, so that each of the funds actually has their own capital projects fund. You start with the first column with the water fund. They have enough reserve in the water capital projects fund for next year that there would not need to be any subsidy from the water fund to achieve the project expenses.
And that's in and out of borough combined. That's the total enterprise.
this is actually separating, I'm looking at just the water fund and the water capital projects fund.
Right, but when I say the water fund, that's not just Hanover Borough, because the bulk of our customers are ex-borough customers. So it's everything combined.
Correct, yes, it's consolidated.
Thank you.
Correct. You go over the next two, the regional wastewater, again, establishing, it would need a $1.9 million infusion from the regional wastewater for the wastewater capital projects funds. Again, but it's something that the regional wastewater still ends up with a positive balance as far as the ending cash balance. Sanitary sewer fund, pretty much the same situation where we have to infuse $495,000 into the capital projects fund, again, to fund the projects and capital outlays for that area. And then the stormwater authority is the same thing, $116,000 we move over into the capital projects fund. But again, that's going to be the methodology we're going to use going forward, so we have that visibility from a capital projects and outlay versus just the operating revenues and expenses for each of the funds. Just a simpler approach, easier to explain, and we can, if there's not, when you have it buried into the normal fund, it just gives you a skewed view of the activity. So hopefully we'll approach it that way, and it'll be easier for the council to see what's going on. Slide 18. Oh, sorry, I had so many slides here.
Kind of small there.
Yeah, I know. Okay, gotta work on my funds. So just try to wrap up. I know I'm over time here, but again, this gives you a view of the debt service. Obviously, in the proprietary funds, our debt service is much higher than we have for the governmental funds at 3.6 million. Add in additional capital leases. Will bring our debt service and lease service up to about $3.8 million. That's on a cash basis for next year. Flipping the slide to the next slide, 19, you see the outlays for equipment and software, the building and facilities, infrastructure. Again, Eric, I may have that number wrong on the dam, but I have about a little over $1 million in expenditures next year for the dam. And I know the Goodfield stabilization, that there's going to be a grant that comes in to offset that. But in the ballpark, about $3.6 million of capital outlays for proprietary funds. With the debt service and the capital leases, it's not on the slide, but it's $7.4 million in capital outlay on a cash basis for next year. Combined with the governmental funds and the proprietary funds, we're just short of $11 million in cash outlay for capital project funds. It's a big chunk of change.
That's before the building.
That's before the building. Well, that's actually, part of the building is in there, about $700,000 for the, but anyway,
Down
I just
payment on
want,
the architectural funds.
I want the council to get an appreciation for the magnitude of our capital outlays, our capital projects. It's pretty big, and so if we, again, with our buildings over the next 3 years, I think if we go at the pace that we initially are talking about is $11 million next year and potentially $25 million over the next 2 years. It's a lot of money. It's something we have to plan for. Take a really close look at our funding. I think really prioritizing what we need to do, I think, is going to be very important. Improving our controls over the spend, ensure that we're keeping in mind the project progress along with our spend, so we need to have better controls over that, and our ability to adapt or change if we need to. If something changes and our requirements change or the timing change, we need to be able to adapt to that. And so instead of just we set a budget and forget about it, it's just not something we can do anymore. We got to, especially when we get into these large numbers. But that's all I had for this evening. And again, this is just the preliminary of the October finance meeting. I'm hoping we're going to have very close to a final budget, and I guess the reading's in November, and we need to adapt, as Scott said, before Christmas Eve.
Right,
For the
that's-
final budget.
Well,
so.
we have to, I think it has to lay in the public eye for 30 days.
Yeah, so in November, yeah.
So we're always
Advertising.
right at Christmas Eve,
Yeah,
hustling to,
but it's a very short time frame. There's a lot to do, a lot to go over and prepare for.
Well,
But
yeah.
please, take a look at these. If you have any questions, please let me know. And we'll come back to you with a little bit better refinement of the numbers.
Jim, thank you very much. Well, very well done.
Thank you.
Yes, it gives a nice, realistic, like, paper of where we are. We sort of really know where we are.
Right, it's not,
It's not right, but that's what I meant.
Yeah, you may not like the
No, I
answer,
meant-
but it is the
yeah.
real answer.
Yeah.
So, that's good.
It's good.
Okay. Jim, again, thank
Yeah,
you. I
thank
guess
you.
we're on to item 5, Finance, Personnel, and Administration. Amy, I guess that puts you on the
Seat.
hot seat, as they say.
Yep. So as I explained in the memo that you have and hopefully read, what we're proposing is a little bit of a reorganization over the Water Resource Department. We had previously came to you and asked to hire a Director of Water Resources. We've been looking for somebody to fill that role since March and have been unsuccessful in finding somebody who could really take hold of that role and be able to handle a job of that magnitude. In the meantime, Eric has been fulfilling that role, and I've received really positive feedback from supervisors and staff, really liking the ability to go to him with questions, big picture questions on their projects and assistance in preparing plans and those kind of things. So what we're proposing is that he stay in that capacity, and instead of filling the Director of Water Resources job, we instead provide Eric a utilities business manager. So somebody who kind of works with Jim and Eric, kind of overseeing the business of the utilities, looking at profits and losses and working with Jim to control the budget. And so so what I'm asking you to do is to approve the hiring of this utilities business manager. We will discontinue our efforts to hire a Director of Water Resources.
Sort of a refinement of the prior
Right.
job.
So basically, what we're doing now, only we want to add a utilities business manager who will fill the gaps. And then also, as I've mentioned a few times, we've stolen AJ's assistant director and have him fulfilling a role overseeing the meter department and I&I. And that is working very well. We'd like to keep him in that role, but in the meantime, AJ needs help at Public Works. So we're backfilling that position. So that's what I'm proposing to you.
So I would make a motion to approve that, because it's more of a P&L directed function, with the person driving the top line, the revenue line, and driving down the cost line, which I think everybody can pretty easily understand the expectations of that job. And I think it would be far easier to fill a job that most people understand what the basis of it is. So I thank you for considering that refinement. So can I have a motion to approve that?
Question,
Yes.
do you think with the reorganization and hiring of a new manager, I'm not against it, I think it makes a lot of sense. Which, and we can proceed with finding the person. I just think trying to make a shift in structure of the organization without, the new manager could come in and make adjustments too. So does it make sense to hold a little bit?
Well, we've been,
Well,
go ahead, Amy.
so the reason that these things are coming to you now is because while we're working on the budget for 2023, we really need to know where these positions are going to fall as far as planning for the budget. So that's why this is being brought to you now. Realistically, if we had a manager come in, they're probably going to be coming in at the end of the end of the year. And there's, it's going to take a while for that person to really figure out what's working and not working in our organization. And at that time could recommend a change maybe mid-year if there is something, in mid-year of 2023 that would make more sense than this.
So essentially, this is, at that level, it's a budgetary placeholder, but it's recognizing the need for the position going forward, which we already had budgeted for. I'm sorry, Barb?
Can't we just put a placeholder? I mean, I concur with Chuck. We're on the cusp of getting a new borough manager. The borough manager may come in and agree that that's the right thing to do. But, I'm sure I believe in the people that came forward with this. I think it's a good plan. I'm just saying I would just prefer to just hold on and put a placeholder in the budget for it. And see when the new person comes, if the new person concurs with that reorganization.
Conceptually,
my opinion.
I agree with what last two councilors have said, but this falls under category something that I believe we've been looking at for a period of time.
Over a
And
year.
Over a year since, and
Yeah.
we looked at trying to better manage those particular funds and enterprises. Our first attempt with a dedicated executive over top of all of it, we thought we found the right person. They obviously didn't stay for personal reasons, and now we've come to a new model, which would be to look at managing the business side of it, which it seems to be, there's easier to find people there, and in my review of it, it fits. I mean, from a practical standpoint, and I believe it allows us to utilize the talents of our engineer, Mr. Maines, and then accentuate the business aspect of it through a more management-type person. So, yes, I agree with what you both said, but this is one we keep kicking around and never solve.
When
I
we
mean,
filled
it's
the
a big-
position,
It's a big
Yeah.
fund for us. We need to have somebody looking over it. If we can't find that, we could go with another kind of thing.
If I would, I mean, I haven't seen the final numbers on, and we don't know what exactly this individual would the compensation package would be, but it just seems initially that it would be a savings over when we had the executive over it, and the new proposal, I think, will actually be a savings and still cover the requirements for the borough. You would agree?
Agreed.
Okay.
and they'd be driving both the top line and the cost line.
Yes,
Which
yes, yes,
today,
Yeah,
there's
We're not doing
really
both.
nobody doing.
we're doing one, right.
We were fortunate enough to get through an ex-borough rate increase, but there's, nobody that's their full-time job, and, we're missing out there. So, do I have a motion to approve that position? Where do we stand?
So, I think you have a motion.
A motion, a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Scott, I think Scott did.
Can I make the motion?
No, I just asked who did, that's all.
Okay, well, if that's okay, procedurally, I'd make the motion. Okay. Second,
I'll second that.
okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I am.
Barb's opposed? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Chuck, too.
Chuck's opposed? All right,
And I'm gonna object also, although no.
okay. So we have 3 opposed. What's next? 5B.
Oof, okay.
I
So,
have some information on that last one. So when it moves to council, you have the full information on that. Just one thing I'd like to add on the, this position. So what you by not filling that and moving ahead with this now, we understand with the new manager coming in and being able to reevaluate. This actually goes back 5 managers ago. So if you look, we've tried to fill the same type of position in-house,
The water resource director position?
something similar
Or
to that,
thereabouts,
right?
Some
right.
version.
Several times, so over the last 6 or so years. So what we have now with the setup now, what you are gaining while we have all these moving pieces going on right now and all the projects happening in the borough, you're actually getting continuity with that communication from Eric through all the departments. So just to give you an example, we always hear about the Orangeburg pipe in the streets. So it's been a big thing as we've been doing these paving projects with Columbia Gas coming through. We've always tried to push, we really need to get in there and do this piece of it too. For the first time since I've been here, that's actually happening now. And the borough residents are gaining that through the setup that we're currently using. So I'd really hate to delay that and kind of go backtrack a couple steps where we were and lose that momentum that we have gained with this current setup.
And just to speak to that, that continuity is through our engineering director, serving now as the head of that.
Motion got
But
approved.
he will be the first to admit to you, and I'm not gonna let him say it, I'm gonna say it for him. He's not a business manager. That's not what he does. That's not what he wants to do. So we, in all fairness to our responsibility as well as responsibility to him and all staff, it's a position that we need to create. And to AJ's point, I guess, we have been trying. Is it 6 years? But
Right,
yeah,
right.
it seems like this might be a model which could work.
The position would easily pay for itself in
Good.
months, not years.
And I want to clarify, I don't think that anyone is saying that we don't agree with
No.
the change in the
No,
I agree
organization.
to change it.
No, that's what I
It
said.
makes sense. I think it's just the matter, I'm not sure.
Timing.
The timing
Yeah,
of
that's
it,
No, I
my
get
only
you.
issue.
Get it?
you know? I mean, it's just the timing, but I'm in total agreement with the
I'm too.
structure of
I
what's
think you have a
going
good
on.
plan.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, AJ.
Amy, I'm under the impression that you don't have anybody in mind at this point, correct?
For the business manager, I do not.
You'll have to create a defined job description.
Yeah,
and
we
then-
have a job description, which is included in
It's
your
in our
packet,
packet.
but we are not, we haven't advertised that job, because it was pending your approval, so.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go on 5B, if we may. Retirement discussion.
So this, again, is something that has been kicked around for a long time. I went back in my records, and the first time I was asked to prepare a list of borough employees who were eligible for retirement was in 2014. In 2014, there were 24 people who were eligible according to the criteria that they set at that time, and 5 of which took advantage of it. We're in kind of a similar boat now. This incentive program sets the criteria of 30 years of service and eligible to retire under the employee pension, which would exclude any of our civil service or police and fire. So it's just borough employees, including management and staff. So there are 22 people who meet that criteria. So there are 22 employees at the borough who've been here for longer than 30 years, of which I've jokingly said 21 might consider it. Dale is the exception, just so you know. If all 22 would take advantage of it, which absolutely would never happen, it would cost the borough about $600,000 for those employees to be paid out and go. The savings on that side would be I'm estimating about $300,000 in wages just in the first year. And what that is because these employees have been here for 30 years. These employees are the ones who have the longevity included in their pay, in their salaries. They also have, years, literally years of paid time off accrued. And so we would be bringing in, somebody would move up into those positions, and we would be bringing somebody in, backfilling at the bottom of our pay rate. So I came up with $300,000 in the first year by kind of looking at each position and would it be filled, would it not be filled, and what would a replacement cost be to have somebody come in at the bottom and shift somebody up. So I played with those numbers a little bit, and it's about $300,000 it'll save for 2023 and
That
moving
assumes
forward.
100% replacement head for head?
That assumes 100% replacement head for head if every position is refilled.
Right.
Yes.
That's important to understand.
This example that you guys have in front of you is the one that was used by another municipality. It was provided by our labor attorney. And it is, has the big draft across the front of it for a reason. I want you guys to look at this and really, provide your comment. It can be tweaked to something, if there's a part of it that doesn't make sense or, that you want to change, that can be discussed. The thing is, with the 2022 budget, there were a lot of positions that were not filled for the entire year. And so, like as we discussed, the Director of Water Resources position, the borough manager, the finance director, those are three larger paying positions that weren't filled for at all this year or a very small part of this year. And so right now we're at the end of 2022, we're positioned where there's actually not excess, but there's already budgeted salaries in, it's already in our budget. And so this would be a better opportunity to have these retirements happen this year versus next year or the following year where we may not have that excess in our budget. So again, this is kind of a timing thing where we would be asking employees to review the incentive program, apply for participation, and then we would set the parameters as far as how many we're going to let go, how many we're going to let participate, do we do it by department, those type of parameters. So. Question?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you putting this incentive out now because of this money?
It's a combination.
But is that the reason?
That's why right now versus next year. So right now, it makes more sense. It's something that, as I said, this is something that we've considered lots of times. This has been something that has been brought up, and how do we do it, and what do we do, and we've done it wrong a couple times. But this is something that is continually brought up, and there's a lot of employees who are on the fence about retiring, but they're worried about health insurance cost. How are they going to pay for health insurance? So what this is kind of gives them the ability to go ahead and retire now while we have the money to pay for it. And
Are they the ones that are asking you?
no,
Okay, so I'm just saying for myself, I hate when my good people leave. I'm just saying, I don't like training. I don't like all the newness coming. I realize it has to happen at some point. I just didn't know if you were encouraging them to retire because we have this money. Maybe they don't want to retire. Maybe they don't want to.
well, this will be completely voluntary. So we will not ask anyone to do this. This will be put, if approved by council, it'll be made available to employees, and anyone who meets the criteria would apply to do it.
Question
truly
I
about
have
the
is-
money.
is, you say it's 300 something. Is that per year of this 3 years? Or is that total cost associated with covering their insurance for 3 years? Per this agreement?
The savings of $300,000 per this
But you said it was
agreement
gonna
would be
cost
$300,000.
us. It would be a cost, right? We have to pay for
It's
it.
our cost.
Yeah, the cost was
No.
600
The cost is $600,000
Per
this
year?
this year,
once and done.
if everybody participated.
Right.
So $600,000 would be to would be the cost in this year. And then it's a $300,000 savings at least next year, and then if those positions are filled, and then every year after that until that wage gap between the people who
savings of
are
that gap.
hired at this level till they get to where those people that left made, you know what I'm saying? The health insurance cost doesn't change because we're paying.
I'm sorry, your rates may go up
Yes, our rates may
because
go
the
up. That's
people that
true,
are going to
Barb.
get it are old people.
Yeah, I correct.
Right.
And I have a
stand-
problem with free medical insurance for anybody.
Right.
So I couldn't deal, I'm a no on this, no. And how would you decide how many people go? I mean, what if you got 20 people and said, oh, I'm sorry, only 10 go, the rest of you can't go? Is it by the time you hand it in, or we like you and you go, we don't like you, you go? How's that decided?
I think before anybody would have the chance to apply, each department would have to determine how many they could afford to lose. And then it would be a first come, first served per department. That's
That's
kind
tough
of
to
what
be
I've.
departments, for the department heads to say, you know,
Yeah,
you
I
don't do a
agree.
good job, you're going. I like you, you're not going, you're staying.
No, it can't,
I think that's pretty tough on them and not fair. And I'm opposed always to paying people for not doing any work.
Just like to comment, more to Carol's, I guess, question or comment earlier. This was directed to staff and Amy to come up with strategies because of that pie chart during Jim's presentation, where
Right.
you look at our
Yeah.
labor costs, our salaries, our human costs being such a significant part of our budget. So, I mean, that's what she's responding to. It is a way to reduce, at least short-term, for that cost, and we'll be faced with that decision as we get more experienced or older, top-heavy at some point in the future. I certainly hear your point, Barb. That's a separate subject,
Yeah.
but I would imagine, though, to maybe what Barb had voiced, that this is not set in stone. Perhaps that could be molded into a different version of this, something that would be more palatable there. I
I'm
don't know.
sure the
And is
persons
it-
would retire based on the fact they don't have to pay their medical insurance.
Yeah, it's-
I
that's
can't,
in its-
I'm opposed to paying
Well, they
people
pay
for not
little
doing
of it
anything.
now, do they not? I don't know what they pay.
And the people at the highest cost of medical insurance, if
Yeah.
they were 17 and 18, they don't get sick very much.
Right.
But you're here for 30 years, you're old, and you're gonna have some extenuating illnesses that are gonna cost some money.
Sure.
And I just think that sets a bad example to give your to pay people to not do anything.
I don't know how
Is
the
there
medical
benefits for
costs
looking
are
at
determined.
bumping,
Are they-
like down in Maryland, State Highway, they'll bump somebody up a pay grade to go into a higher, different level on pension or something. Is there another way of encouraging it via pension aspect versus a healthcare aspect?
I mean, ultimately, it translates
Oh,
into
they
an
get more in their
employee
pension.
benefit, however that benefit is arrived at, and everyone has a different equation, so I don't want to speak for you, but I'd like to think that there is a version that would take Counselor Rupp's concerns into the development of the equation, if you will, into how we maybe put this out there. The point I'd like to say, and I'll shut up, is that it has to be equally offered, and it has to be certainly fair to all considered, and it is their right to accept it or not.
Right.
Plain and simple. Our role is to help develop something that we think will meet that
Should
criteria.
encourage.
Okay, but the other thing that I think we're overlooking, everything is monetary right now. But it is the older people have the experience, and they're worth more to us, even beyond their paycheck sometimes. And if we let them go and get someone who would only, say, would leave us in 2 years, and this guy has expert knowledge, I'm looking beyond the monetary to what it gives back to the borough and to the people. So we have to look at it both ways here. Okay? That's all I'm gonna say.
How
What?
many of the retirees are in key positions?
Well, I
Majority.
mean,
I
that's
don't
a,
think we want to
That's
get
a
into a
hard-
discussion of
Yeah, I
names here.
know. What I was getting at is, if all of them go, are we even gonna have?
We're in trouble.
right,
Yeah,
and
I
you know,
just foresee,
Your,
Tough
to
for
your
department
point,
heads to decide
actually,
who
AJ
goes.
raised that concern as well, because, you know, that he was like, well, what if, you know, I can't lose,
Sure. Keep too many.
yeah, too many
Everybody.
people. So that's where we started the discussion on, well, how many you know, how many can you lose? And maybe that's how we set it up before they apply, you know, how many can you lose from each department? That way, once those numbers are filled, it's a first come,
Right,
first serve, and
it's up to us to set the parameters.
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Could we set something up where they would, we'd look at the people who are eligible to retire, who are closest to the age when they can collect, when they can go on Medicare? Is that something that you can do, or is that illegal? I don't know.
I would think this is not written. This is a draft. This is not
Right.
official until we
It's a
do it.
concept to agree, do we directionally agree that we proceed?
Yeah, and,
in
yeah,
this way.
conceptually, and whatever we would do, the solicitor would help us with alleviating your concerns.
Right.
So, like, right now, is this something to keep exploring, or not, is the question.
I will when everyone's done.
Okay.
How about now?
Yeah, help us out here.
So, well, no, to the question, I know this is a draft. It's not applicable to the borough specifically.
As an example.
And so whatever, if Borough Council decides to offer this, the details of that program need to be vetted by council, so that every employee who's similarly situated is offered the same. And the second, we would do it by resolution. So it would be an official policy of the borough for whatever period of time it's offered. And it's very clear what is being offered. So we do it the right way.
So,
Is there interest? Yeah.
is there interest? I mean, I would make a motion to move forward with the proposal we have here and to further develop where we're going with that. Could I get a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Here,
2 opposed?
Yeah, me too.
3 opposed?
All opposed.
2
yeah,
2 opposed.
yeah.
Scott moved, Gary seconded, and then he called the vote, which was, you were,
Yes.
okay, Darlene was opposed.
Darlene was opposed and Barb was opposed?
And Carol.
Carol was opposed too. Okay,
And
Brian's
and
opposed.
Carol.
And Brian's opposed, so
all right.
Barb, Carol, Brian. Anybody else opposed?
Darlene.
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 Yeah.
Okay.
4 opposed, 5-4.
All right.
Gives us 5 in favor of and 4 against.
Okay, next is 5C, eligibility list for police hires. Direct the Civil Service Commission to create an eligibility list from September, this month, of whatever the MYPTC means, you know.
Yeah, again, this is just checking the blocks.
What does that mean?
Service. That's the Metropolitan York Police Testing Consortium.
Thank you.
You know, we tested in January. We had like 100 applicants. It's 8 departments. We've expired our list. We were testing again this Saturday. As of this morning, we had 54 applicants. So again, this is just, authorizing or directing civil service to establish that list of people eligible to hire, at which point then we can get our backgrounds.
How many open spots do we have?
3. If you remember, council approved up to 25 officers back in March. We were able to actually hire 3 off the January list, which is 50% of what we need. So we're actually fortunate. I think we're fortunate to have gotten 3. And again, we were able to find some diversity in those 3, and look forward to doing the same here.
I'd like to make the motion to direct the
Second.
Civil Service Commission.
I'll second.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That was easy. Chad, get out and sit down while the going's good, right? Thank you, sir. Number 6, governance and policy. Amy, you're back.
Come on.
Maybe
Okay,
we should let
so-
Chad help you with this one.
Yeah, Chad, you want to do this? please?
The first one's
So-
easy. The first one's really, they're easy.
Yeah,
They're
okay.
quick.
These, so the bid procurement contracts and purchasing policy, this is something that I asked Dory to start putting together for us because anytime I need to buy anything, I go to Dory's office and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? So the idea was that we develop a policy that kind of pulls from all the different areas and puts it all in one central document. And then I had Jim Shelton create a procedure based on that policy. And so what I'm asking is for you to approve this policy. It went through the governance committee and there were some minor changes and it's now here for your approval.
So
Make a
moved.
motion to approve.
Motion
Oh,
to, motion
Get
to
a
approve.
motion?
So
Get a
moved.
second?
President Ricard, Darlene's a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Amy, you're on a roll.
All right.
Item 6B.
Quickly. Okay, so the next one, this is put before you because it was the policy that was adopted by you September 22nd of 2021. This is the policy on the relationship between council members and staff. This was brought to governance with the idea that to have the opportunity to make any changes if they thought any changes needed to be made to be updated in the policy. They did not recommend any changes, but asked that it be sent to council for review by everybody to kind of put it back in front of any new council members as well, so that you're all familiar with what the policy states. The short summary of it is that contact with staff should funnel through a borough manager. In the absence of a borough manager, I've asked in my role now that anytime council members contact staff, it's through a director, and then the director CCs me, so I just am aware of what's going on. And then once a borough manager is in this role, that will be the filter through which everything that you need should go through.
I think we've had this discussion, numerous times, and it keeps us all from giving different direction to different
Well, it came
members
from our
of.
committee, and our committee decided that we initially approved it, that we would look at it regularly to remind people of that relationship. Because it's really important, and we don't want to get in to do their job. That's not our job. Our
Right.
job is to look at the big picture and talk to people that
And
we
you
need
would,
to talk to people. Yeah.
I say that respectfully, you would have the most experience with that
Yeah,
because
don't-
you've
but-
been.
But,
yeah.
it's just important that we continually review that relationship, so we have our job and they have their job. It's a good thing.
So we need a motion to
So moved.
approve that. A
Motion,
second?
Scott.
Second.
I think we need a motion.
Yep, it's just a review.
It's just a review. We don't
Just
need
a
motion.
review, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Engineer.
Number 7A, rental registration.
Let's talk about rental registration.
All right.
So, the direction that I had been given when we last took up this topic was after some discussion and debate, and we got to a point where we were asked to come up with another version of the ordinance, that version of the ordinance, pulling back inspections from the initial push out of the program, that we were going to focus instead on registration, make sure we had our feet under us solidly about that, and then we would come back in and talk about inspections and things like that. So the version of ordinance that I have distributed to you has redacted out the inspection criteria. It has built itself around building the registration piece first. You will see very deliberately it says in there now, reserved for future use. I've left inspection in there, it's holding place, so that we can come back and have that discussion. So I am once again coming to you guys asking for direction on what your next move, what you want to do with that is, so that I can work with the solicitor and move accordingly.
Can we approve this as it stands?
You can do anything you want. You've got my version that I most recently put in front of you. Certainly there was the prior version that was put in front of you that I think we've walked back on a little bit.
Right? We basically took back the inspection piece of it and say we'd stay with the,
But leaving a placeholder for it to come in a future
if,
discussion.
when and if needed in the future, right?
I would like to put a motion that we keep the inspection in and put a date in which inspection would be implemented after the permitting system is in place.
I would second that
Say-
motion.
No, wait, say that again, Chuck, I'm sorry.
That we keep the language in the ordinance as it was with inspection, but not implement the inspection. We basically put a date by which it would be implemented at some date that Eric, the permitting system is in place. So it's just the next phase, but we don't have to come back to it again. It's just
Correct. And we can take
implemented
moving forward
January
with it.
1st, 2025, or something like that.
I think the essence of our discussion was always about inspection, because we do have some of these places that are not properly maintained,
Yeah.
not fit for some of the individuals
Right.
in our town to live in. And we're talking about the quality of life for people.
Right.
And I think we talked a lot about inspection, how important it was, and then it's gone. So I would agree with Chuck, if we can start out with the first step, this first level, as
Right.
Eric explained, and then move into the inspection and keep it there, just keep it right there and just put a date on it. I think then we don't have to come back and talk about it again. It would just happen. Eric would come back to us and say, we're ready for the
For
next
the next
phase.
step. Eric, how long would it take to initially get this first step done, completed?
I mean, feasibly, I think you should figure on a year.
Okay.
I think we're going to have a lot of public outreach effort to get people back engaged. As I've said to you several times, the program that is on the books now is not working, and it's just a registration piece. I
Right.
mean, you have like a three-page ordinance that
two.
mandates it.
Dory sent it out today, it's two, but you're,
Yeah, so
Pathetic.
it's going to take me a while to get that public outreach, to get people to understand what their obligations are. The program, I'm good with it. The platform's built. Chris has already been working on building that the last several months when we first started these conversations. So, I'm not worried about the timing of that, but now comes the hard part, getting the word out, getting the people in, and then being able to check it to make sure that the people that are supposed to be in are in.
and get them to comply with the actual
Yes.
registration
Yes.
portion of it.
That's an
Correct.
issue, yeah.
So that
That's-
is no less
Compliance
than a
issue
year
is
effort.
huge.
You're,
Yeah.
right, that'll be, you'll never do it in a year.
Yeah.
Unless that's the only thing we choose we want to do. I think Chris has done, or Chris and his organization under your management have really done a good job, and we've, really touched on the bottom, 5 or 10% that are very problematic.
What happens to owners if that form is not filled out? Is there, I
There
didn't
are
catch any.
penalties in the new one. The old
There
one
are?
is very lax, but the new ordinance has penalties in it for failure to register.
Okay, so,
So there is an entire enforcement
and we'd be able to find out
piece
who
to
they
it
are.
that is not existing now, that is
Okay.
here, that will give Chris tools to,
Okay.
much like he would issue through citations and notices of violation. We have a legal process that is well vetted, and certainly through the solicitor, we'd work it out, but you would move forward with some.
So could a code violation still be brought up, and then would someplace be inspected?
Well, if I issue someone a failure to register, that's likely just coming from an administrative recognition.
No, I'm
that they
thinking if
didn't-
somebody mentioned something, somebody else, some tenant. I
Well, we
don't- I
already
don't
have
know.
the ability
yeah.
to do that today.
Yeah, we, right now, and this goes to the discussion that we've had before, which is, right now, our program, as far as finding those things, is very, what I would say, reactionary.
Okay.
I'm only reacting to either what my officers see when they're out in the field, or what may come to us in complaint forms, or verbal, or emails. That's the only way we exist to find those things. Now, when Chris goes out to look at things, he's not laser beaded on one, he'll go out and look at an entire
Okay.
block, if that's the case. But that doesn't mean he's going into every apartment
No.
unit. So the apartment units are sort of firewalled, and I'm only gonna see them if we have access to it, if we're granted access to it, or something like that.
Well, if you
So
get a complaint too, you can go out and access it, can you not?
it doesn't give me permission to go into the structure necessarily.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, because originally, we had everything ready to go, and then we hesitated and questioned, which I'm not sorry we did, because then we got to the point where you said, you know what, we have to take first steps first, but I don't want to see this thing go down till 2026 and 25. I like the idea of getting this done as soon as possible. It is important to this town, and to the tenants as well as the investors of this area. And so I'm behind going as strongly as possible after this and starting it, completing the first step, and then move on to the second, really. Okay? I don't want to wishy-washy around. This isn't the time for us to do this. Comments?
You're saying what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's just a matter of figuring out what that timeline is.
How are we gonna pay
That's
for
why
it?
I asked him how
And you
long to put
can,
this
and you
first step
can,
in.
and you can move it, that date doesn't, if Eric's not ready.
No,
you can
Eric
al-
said, but he
No, I'm
can-
saying if he
He's
doesn't
ready.
meet in a year, whatever.
In a year.
So
Right.
conceptually, what would that date be? How long
My
would,
suggestion, again, it's no less than a year.
no less?
It's no less than a year.
And in that same time, Chris Miller, or our existing inspection group, they're essentially starting at the bottom and working their way up, meaning with the problematic units, because we already know where those are.
Sure.
That's not
Just
a,
get it in there.
that's no secret.
I'm sorry?
Do 2 years,
So-
get it in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the
I'm
way
fine
this will
with that,
work, and
as long
not
as
to
we
belabor
lock it
too
in.
much, but the way this would
Well,
work
but
is.
let me, not to short circuit this, but, okay, so we're coming up on today, this is 2023. It would be at best mid-24,
Probably first quarter '24. Because
Right,
we still have
so
to
can
adopt
we
the
put
things.
mid-
There's advertisements,
Right.
there's
end of
hearings.
There's a lot of
Q1
stuff to do.
24 to
2 months out.
A lot
reevaluate
of
where we are?
education.
Is that
Well,
reasonable?
Put a date in there, then we can back and look at that date. If that works, fine. If it doesn't, we'll have to change the date.
Okay. And in the meantime, Chris is working, as I was saying, from the bottom up with the problematic ones. So we're already addressing the problem. It isn't saying we're not doing anything in the interim, correct?
We can still address the problems and have them
Right,
straightened out,
because
correct, Eric?
Chris
On the
and
one-to-one?
his staff are doing that now.
Yes, and doing a good job.
And absolutely doing a good job.
I think
Okay.
too, what this does to property owners, that they know it's coming.
Gives them a heads up.
They can plan for it. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be a surprise. There's no surprise to it.
Right.
Well, we
It's
also have to
there.
figure out how we're gonna pay for it.
Well,
Inspections are
to my
being
point
paid
the
for.
last time, we're still, when we get ready to go live with an inspection piece, we're still going to need a conversation at council level about the fee structure and how that's gonna look and some
Right.
of those logistics. So
Right.
what I'm hearing
And you're
is we're
saying
gonna
third
build the
party.
regulatory piece
third
in,
party.
and then work on the logistic piece, perhaps
Well,
first
and maybe
quarter of a year. from
Better
now.
yet, by the time we have it sized, end of Q1 of '24, we really know how big the beast is. And at that point, Chris, working from the most problematic up, or the most outspoken way up, my guess is that has become smaller than it was.
Yeah, the point I made last time is I don't
That's the
think you know
purpose.
how many rental units you have.
I know
don't
how many we have.
rental
We
units
have
you
6,400 households, and half of them are rentals, so
I mean,
3,200
we
of
have
them.
numbers coming out of census, but you're gonna be surprised when you see the numbers.
Well, but,
It's 60.
It's a lot.
okay, I'm gonna be surprised if how you're gonna get everybody to register, but
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Because essentially, you're probably gonna have to register every household,
Right.
and then of those
There's a fee.
6,400,
So you can't
these
just keep ignoring
Yeah,
X are
we've started this
rentals.
actually when Sam was still here. He had built some query tools that we were able to use. There's actually ways in our finance database, we can tell where the rental units are. We can look at a simple pairing between owner occupied versus who's living in a unit. We
Right.
can look at some of those things. We can look at water meters. There's different things we can do. Gets us pretty close to where that list is.
Remember, though, we're just voting to drop the per capita tax, which is one of those tools.
Agreed, but I believe there's enough
Just-
other tools we
I
probably.
believe the school district has one too, and we can tie that same database together, but,
Yeah, we've done a
Okay.
dry run initially as we built the platform to make sure that it was something we could do. So I'm comfortable with that. It needs some refinement, but.
So the other
just-
aspect too, what we didn't figure out is the duration of it. Is it every year? Is it 3 years? I mean, if it's a 3-year inspection or something, I mean, that's not significant.
Yeah, the duration's in the
Up to
draft.
1,000 a year.
Already, it's two. I think it's
Two.
one inspection at least, no less than once every 2 years.
Okay, I
Yeah.
remember.
okay.
But you'll have this all ready to go for that, by the time you jump into that second step. You will have covered the major thing that we needed to begin with. Those who invest in properties and the rentals, you need all this information. And like you said, before it was like fly by night, it really wasn't followed through. So now we're very serious about this.
Yeah, and I want to at least, we do get some people who register. The forms come in and some people do follow it. So it's not as though nobody is, but by
The odds
far
are they're not the
majority.
Are you
problematic ones
going
still.
to send out notices to people that they have to register?
We're going to have a whole public education piece. I'm
Good.
going to have to figure out how we're going to do that, but yes,
Okay.
we will do something.
You have some ideas, though. Okay, thank you, Eric.
Okay, so
There is a problem.
what is it where,
So if
Rental
I can
registration,
wrap
we
this
need
up
a-
for you, what I'm hearing you to say is that you liked the first version with the inspections. You would like a timing element added to it so that it reflects that there's a period we're just building the registration, and then there's a period at which time we'll begin the inspections.
what I'm hearing is we're approving the registration portion of it, and we're gonna come back Q1 of 2024
No, that's not what I said.
and revisit the
No,
inspections.
no, that's not what I said.
Okay, what did you say?
I said I want the original language with a statement that the inspections don't begin until X date, and that we can revisit the other aspects associated with whether that needs to be extended, or whether or not
We're ready
the
for it.
fees and so on, how how that's done. It's in there. It's there. Everyone knows it's coming.
Right.
There's nothing being hidden, but it's not being implemented right away.
And what's the date?
I mean, I'm fine with a 2-year if it needs to be, but at least it's in there.
So then you're saying it's Q1 of '25.
Or sooner.
I'd like to say
Or
24.
sooner. Or sooner.
About 24.
I think the driver factor is, do we have the permits in place?
Yeah.
Do we have the
Well, and do
system?
we have the people to do it? And
The
if we
permit's
don't,
different, the inspection's third party,
Yeah.
and we're not doing it internally.
well, we haven't identified that in my mind yet, but okay.
I thought it was discussed at the last meeting that that was the way it was gonna
I
be
never,
done.
I have a fair amount of experience with this in other municipalities and can tell you with no doubt that it's a catastrophe every other
Continue to just
place.
ignore it, it's not gonna work.
Well, is it an inspection the problem, or is it what Chris is doing, enforcement of existing ordinances, the problem?
Well, that's Chris's one person with 50% rentals. You wanna talk
Okay.
about needing to add staff, that's where,
Well, then maybe that's where we add the staff.
I disagree. I think you could have it go out the other way.
I think so. Third party. Can we say 2024? This is
Yes.
2022, for God's sakes. Can we
Yeah.
say 2024?
Well, this is Q4
Yeah.
I think
essentially
one of the
of
things with an
22.
ordinance is, and Solicitor, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't typically see a date nested in an ordinance.
All right.
It's not, you might see something, say, 180 days upon enactment of this, you might see something like that, but I don't typically see an ordinance that has a
All right.
date
Right.
in it.
I don't,
So for like on-lot septic inspections,
Yeah.
when you implement that, borough-wide, for example, you could set up zones, for example, and say in zone 1, and this may apply here.
you could do it by ward, for that matter.
Any kind of demarcation, you say in zone 1, the effective date is X, in zone 2, it's Y, and keep on going. I mean, I've seen that. But to Eric's point, if we can't figure out a hard date, because of course we don't know when we're going to enact this, it could be next month or the month after, we can set, it has to be 24 months or whatever the council decides on when to start it.
Okay.
Is it critical to get the registration process in sooner rather than later? Because I think it sounds like those who are thinking inspection are understanding that it is going to take some time to develop and properly vet and advertise, but yet doing something now, maybe my question is it important to do it now for the registration aspect piece?
The registration piece is the sort of framework that you're building
Opens the
upon.
door,
Right.
okay.
You can't roll out an inspection program and
you don't know
Without
who you're
it.
inspecting.
attributing itself to a framework that doesn't exist. So I need the registration piece
Right.
before I can begin to add layers of data, which would be the inspection piece of
Okay.
it.
So then going forward, maybe if you came back with maybe what the solicitor just said, a suggested rollout or implementation, not in terms of a date, but in terms of days upon. At this point, it sounds like it's a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Eric, the short-term rentals are in this too, correct? Or are they separate? Because
Short-term
they
rental is
require-
not because it has its own inspection
they're
process
separate.
laid out in the ordinance for
they're
short-term
separate.
rental.
But wouldn't it be sort of the same?
So that eliminates part of it.
Not the same in the sense of timing, because the sheer magnitudes are so drastically different between the number of short-term rentals and the number of rentals.
Well, I mean, it's more like sort of like a designation between a rental versus a short-term, but at the same time, the inspection's an inspection. Would it be different? Would it be a different type of inspection?
No.
Okay.
No, the inspections would be fairly similar.
So, I mean, it's just sort of like in your permitting system, it's click, it's a rental, or click, it's a short-term rental, but it's still gonna trigger an inspection at some given point.
Yeah, I mean, you could take 18 months and agree that in 12 months' time, we'll come back and see where we're at with the registration, and then you have a 6-month window to adjust your course.
That's a
Well,
great suggestion.
We
Yep.
said Q1 of '24 that we would revisit this, so what if we say it's,
That's 5
March
quarters
of
away.
However you want,
'24?
right.
You okay with that, Barb?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, for
It
me,
needs a date,
timeline
because
doesn't
something
matter.
without a
Something in
date,
it.
soon is not a date. I was
Yeah.
always taught a date is a 6-digit number, a
I-
day, a
I-
month, a day, and a year.
To clarify, I don't have an issue with whatever the council decides as it relates to a timeline for implementation or review of implementation. For me, it's a matter of getting the language in the
Language,
ordinance
yeah.
as it is, that it's
Right.
forthcoming, or there's a planning aspect that's associated with it, and we're not doing an add-on to something later on, if it even makes it there.
Well, I think Eric coming forward and giving us updates on how far he is going to help this council quite a bit, okay? And Eric will be sharing all this with us and the progress that he's making. But we've got to start somewhere. And the people, once they're notified, some will take it to heart, right? Short-term rentals already have the inspection laid out and everything that they have to do, correct? So that kind of takes that away from the perceived rentals. And then we have the private homes, we're not going to be doing those. So that's removed from the scenario, right? Am I correct?
You mean owner occupied?
Private residence, yeah.
Why not?
We're not looking at
No,
owner
you're not.
occupied.
So
Why
that
not, though?
takes that away. You know, Scott, how many homes did you say we had approximately in the
There's
borough?
64,
6,000?
5,500
3,200.
households.
Okay, all right,
Half of
so
them
then
are
we
rentals
deduct
directionally.
these two segments right there, which brings us down to less than the whole enchilada, right? Okay, and what else can we eliminate besides that?
I like what Chuck said about he's just looking for language and how'd you say, forthcoming inspections.
But you can put whatever the timeline that Eric
Right,
wants to put
right,
together
yeah.
for rollout.
Yeah, just to
But
put
things
that
can-
in there.
Right, but things can go wrong, and they can go really well, and you're ahead of your schedule,
Which they
or things can pop in,
Right.
and you're saying, oh, shoot, here we are 2 months behind. But at least we're on the roll now. We know what we want to do, right? Okay.
And I just feel that it's fair to the citizens that they know, they see it. They see where we're going, and they
I like
can
that,
plan
heads
for
up.
it, they can,
Yeah.
have input on it, whatever. It's not hiding anything.
Very fair.
So can we say, we're gonna come back, we're gonna work on the registration portion of it, and end of Q1 of '24, we're going to target the implementation of the inspections? Is that,
I think
Bring
that's
this to
okay,
a-
so long as I'm understanding that, but the structural nature of the ordinance is going
It's
to
just
have the
number of
language
Stays in
there.
there.
Right.
All we have to do is put the
Already.
date in.
And then,
Correct.
yeah, then
well, and you'll have to bring that piece of it back to get us
Right.
all
I'm
on
gonna have
board.
to talk to you about fees, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
We'll be
and
back and forth.
who's gonna pay for them? Because I can assure you that taxpayers are not going to want to pay for them.
I don't think it should be. It should be service-based. It's a service. It should be
That's-
based on those that are using it and not those who are not using it.
I would agree with
It's
that.
service.
Okay,
And then
so-
you also have to have a portion of the fee thing that says when it doesn't pass, and it has to be re-inspected, and this is a real portion of it, because I see it in Gettysburg and York, then who pays for the re-inspection? And if it's a
Yeah.
failure because there's a chair in front of the door or whatever, you know, we make this sound oh so easy, and I can assure you it is not oh so easy.
So we're going back to the original version, we're adding a timing piece to it, and I'm bringing that back to you again.
What
Right.
I understand,
Right.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
and the piece in red comes back for review Q1 of '24.
No, it's already in the ordinance. The piece
going to
in red
be
is
there.
already in the ordinance. It would be approved.
The
It's coming-
language requiring the inspections, as I'm understanding it, would be in the ordinance.
I don't agree with that.
Oh, that's okay.
So
Well, I'm just,
That's what I need direction on, so I need you guys to tell
I
me.
mean, I thought we agreed on
Vote
was
on that?
the registration portion of it, and then we,
I did.
Made a motion. Did we vote?
Yeah.
Oh, don't we have a motion on the table?
I don't know what we have on the table, to be honest with you. Dory?
Was made earlier, was made by Chuck, seconded by Barb, for the inspections to be kept in the ordinance, but not implement the inspections until they add a date on, for the planning aspect.
Okay, and what date do we then agree on? That we,
So-
That would be
It's
provided
gonna
by
come back.
Eric.
I need
On
to
a rollout.
come back to you.
so then there's no movement on this other than Eric has to come back to us with a date.
With how he would want to roll
That
out
was
the
the motion.
program.
To go- He'll come back to us with the date. That was the motion.
Okay, so the motion is Eric's gonna come back to us with a date
And-
for the full, or the structured, or whatever, plan,
orig-
however you wanna phrase it.
Right. The
And then
original
we'll
ordinance.
re-vote on it at that stage.
Correct.
Okay, we get a second on that?
Second,
Second it.
Okay,
did I motion?
all right.
Poor Eric.
Those in favor?
Sweetheart.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Sorry, could we go over what I missed?
too bad. It's over. We had a majority.
You can claim ignorance.
7B,
Okay,
Doss Alley.
Doss Alley. So we are finally to the point now where we have solicited bids from engineering firms to help us do the design for the first piece of Doss Alley. This is a project that goes back about a year ago, if you'll recall. We
Yeah, I
were
thought
granted CDBG money, so we got county money, grant money. Our buy-in for that is $22,000, and for that, what we get is $400,000 worth of improvements for the alley. So
This is the alley here at the
right
parking
behind
lot.
us, yeah, the first segment that goes from Frederick to Exchange Place. It's the first, what I'm calling sort of the pilot project for the Green Alley concept. So we went out competitively, because it's CDBG money, we have to do certain things that we don't always have to do. We had to bid the engineering design of this. We went out, we got bids. Of those, Aero Consulting was the lowest qualified bidder. Their bid was $54,000. You're only responsible for $22,000 in the project. And then you're on the ride for the full $400,000 for design and construction.
Great deal. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Is that enough to cover it all?
Okay,
Where you don't know what the,
we're only doing the piece along this parking lot, I would hope.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's,
a
yeah,
lot.
there's some things we're gonna do.
yeah.
And that puts the telephone wires underground and all that?
Exciting.
It at least gets a conduit, whether or not we get the fiber off the building, that's an expensive little adventure on its own, so. See what we
Okay,
get.
so we have a motion from Mr. Ricart, a
Second.
second
Second.
from Mrs. Funk.
Yep.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. 7C, subdivision and land development saldo amendments.
So what you guys are used to dealing with is zoning. You've had a number of zoning hearings, you're constantly hearing about your zoning boards and zoning cases and conditional uses. This ordinance has nothing to do with that. This ordinance is, what I tell people a lot of times is, this is the instruction manual for how developments and things are put together. This is the nuts and the bolts. These are the technical specifications. 8-inch high curb, 22 feet wide streets, 4 inches of pavement, 6 inches of stone. These are the sorts of things that this particular ordinance specifies and requires. It also lays out the procedure that if someone wants to come in and they want to take their piece of land and they want to subdivide it, this is the document that tells them the process that they have to do. It doesn't have anything to do with the land use and whether they can or can't do it. That's your zoning ordinance. This is a document that says if you want to do that, then you're going to have to come to us with a plan, and your plan has to have all of these things shown in it. This is the document that would get us a more robust traffic impact section that we very much need. Right now, we have some in the zoning, but it's not where I want it to be. As I came into this position with the borough, this has been on my hit list from day one. Because ours references industry standards that don't even exist anymore. It's not aligned with what Wall tells us certain things we're allowed to do and not allowed to do. And so this is a complete redo of this document. It's been something I've been working on in my spare time for the last 1.5 to 2 years. I finally took it to Planning Commission, started vetting it with them the last couple of months. They had a lot of good suggestions and changes, and we now have in front of you a document from your Planning Commission that they are comfortable is light years beyond where your current one is. So the ask is for you to receive that work product from the Planning Commission and allow me to begin to work with the solicitor on getting set up for the necessary steps to adopt it.
I hate to ask this, do we have that?
The document was sent, Dory sent it as a second. It wasn't in your other packet because it's so large.
In your,
It's 101 pages.
It's,
It's 101 pages.
it's a lot,
I
trust
don't
me.
feel bad saying I didn't read it.
It's a lot.
Read it all. I didn't read it.
I
read a lot
did
of
3
it.
times.
You probably did.
Yeah.
I didn't read all of it.
What
but
are
I
you
read
looking
it.
for?
I am looking for this group to authorize officially accepting the work product of the Planning Commission and moving this ordinance forward so that I can begin to work with the solicitor on a legal adoption of it as your new subdivision land development ordinance.
Has anyone reviewed it?
3 times.
I motion it.
Well, other than Chuck.
I
is it
motion it. It was good.
Yeah.
I don't think anything was
Good,
missed
you
in
liked
it.
it. All right, so a motion to approve it?
So motion.
And a second?
Second.
Second?
Got my second.
Brian?
No, no.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, those that dare admit they read it?
It's great.
Yep.
Any opposed? Thank you. That brings us to Public Works and Facilities, roof replacement building for Guthrie.
So if you'll remember, coming from Public Works and Facilities was a recommendation that we accept the recommendations from the architect who looked at the library building and said, look, your problem is that the water's landing on that roof, it doesn't have the appropriate place to go. So what we have affectionately called the umbrella solution, which is to build the roof over top, never even let that water get to that point.
This is
Get
the
it
outdoor deck.
downside, get it outside, get it away from the building. So we've been working with the architect as council had approved us to do. We put together bid specs, design specs, structural engineering drawings, put it out to bid, and the job was estimated around $1 million. We got a low bid for $964,000, so we hit where we thought we were going to, slightly less than. And so this is the point in time at which council decides to move forward with that project. We have vetted the low bidder to make sure that their bid was legit, that they didn't miss anything, that they could do this in a timely fashion. We asked them about materials, certainly material shortages being part of every construction project now. They have reached out to all of their subs. All their materials are available. They could begin work if council moves forward as soon as mid-October, and would look to have it under roof completely by the end of the year. Certainly every day, week, month that sits there, that is more water that we are dealing with, so the sooner is the better. But I also appreciate and recognize that it's a large expense, so.
But this,
Once
this
that
is-
Jim,
roof
how are
goes
we
on
gonna pay
there,
for this?
Is there, the spouting or the water is
Yes.
drained, it comes off and goes, it's behind the wall.
It's not going to do that anymore.
It's going, okay.
It's gonna get traditional, nice looking, but downspouts that will go to ground and tie into the
So we
drainage
can,
system.
okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
the spouting will be external.
The roof
Yeah.
over.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, and tie into pipes
Jim
underground.
Shelton, Amy, Mr. Controller, this is $1 million. How are we gonna pay for this if we were to approve this?
As discussed previously, but not ARPA.
this would come out of the 7 and 4 in the ARPA money.
I do have a question. I do see in your proposed actions, DPE staff will work with the architect to oversee the project. Do we have somebody who can do that? We sort of screwed up the last time with somebody
So-
watching the library. Do we have somebody who could devote the time to really being a project manager?
Buchard Horn, as part of what you've already contracted them for, has
okay.
construction administration in it. So they're already engaged. They would be oversight. That means progress meetings, that means
And that will report to you?
inspection, review of shop drawings,
Okay, good.
as-built drawings, all of those things
Good.
that I've heard haven't happened for the first one. So,
And
yeah.
if we
Thank you.
approve this, do we have a schedule of money outlay and deliverables and dates?
I haven't talked to the contractor that detailed yet. You know,
Okay.
certainly the finance director has kind of split it and put half in, half out. We don't know. I needed your direction whether moving forward. Then the next step is, as we would engage them for what would be notice of intent to award, we would start conversations about
That's where we get that.
scheduling and timing of
So
expenses.
we have a
Make a
motion,
motion to approve.
Barb, and a second?
Second.
Okay,
Okay.
those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Eric, just to refresh our memories on is Buchard working on the Bear Center, or is that still lingering on our conversation? I don't recall where we were with that.
Lingering in the conversations.
It's
Yeah.
not gone anywhere.
It hasn't, only because right now, the effort has been put towards the layout of the new public admin, public safety, as
Right.
well as the water resource public works. We haven't just visited that, just because it wasn't
No,
yet a
no,
critical thing.
right, it's not.
But at some point, we are going to need to have those conversations about what levels of improvements, you want to make there.
Okay, so
Sorry, until the building.
9A,
Thank God.
we're good. We have approval on that. Thank you, Eric.
For the cash.
Number 9, Economic Development Committee, change of committee name and purpose. Is that you,
That's
Chuck?
me.
That's this guy.
So,
You want to change the font too, or?
no. So there's some confusion, obviously, in names, because they're
Right.
kind of all tied together, and it confuses the community. The other aspect of this is that, when the Borough Economic Development Committee was set up, it was its sole purpose to move some of the things like streetscape and other things forward,
Right.
but also principally to work towards getting.
Well, now you have confusion with the EDC and the HEDC.
But that was the thing, the
and
purpose
Main
of
Street
that, the
Hanover
Borough
and-
Committee was to get the HEDC set up, and now that they're a 501c3, the two entities are too much, they're too
So
close.
could we merge the two?
No, but what we're doing is we're just changing the mission of the borough's economic and changing the name so it's not confused with the HEDC.
And
So.
that name is?
We sort of achieved our mission.
Yeah,
It really sort
it
of
achieved the
achieved
mission, so
yeah.
we're recrafting,
Right.
crafting the committee
Repurposing.
to be more community-focused, more on the aspects of the amenities of the community,
What are
rather
we-
than economic development. Our
So what are
our
you
role
gonna-
is not economic
What are you going to
development.
call it?
Well, Carol recommended
Gary
the-
did it.
the enhancement.
Economic.
Gary did it
Enhancement
committee.
It's the Borough Enhancement Committee or Hanover Enhancement Committee, focusing on the amenities and.
Okay,
So, and it also, the difference too is that we're looking to try to build more grassroots efforts with the community, because obviously we can't do everything. So we're recommending that there be 3 advisors from the community on the committee, not voting members, but advisors. And hopefully they're people that want to participate in getting things going out
right,
in the
property owners or what have you, yeah.
or
Care
nonprofits or
about
others.
our downtown, and care about our community. And
think
you could
that's
They
great.
could also be potential council members. I mean, they know a lot about
Right,
council.
which is-
Yeah, which is a good thing.
As I was told years ago, that used to be sort of the breeding grounds, perhaps the wrong term, but the proving ground for new council members were these committees.
Yes. And that's the way it is a lot of
So
organizations.
I agree, it
Yeah.
should be.
So the point is to eliminate the confusion. Hopefully, the community understands better and shifting our mission because we have a economic development corporation now.
Okay, so the motion is to rename the EDC as
Hanover Enhancement Committee.
Hanover
The HEC, Hanover.
Enhancement Committee.
Borough,
Oh, heck.
I don't really care. It just,
That's, all right, so we have a motion and a second.
Quick thought, is there, I know you put more time into it than I just did, but is there?
obviously.
Any other considerations to substitute for enhancement?
That,
I mean, I'm just,
Could be something.
it struck me differently initially.
That was my substitute.
Good job, Gary.
You did mention Gary.
I guess I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, Gary.
originally, in most townships and boroughs, that there is you are allowed to have what they call a sustainability advisory commission, which we don't want a commission or anything, so we.
But enrichment maybe work?
He doesn't like the word
But I don't,
enhancement.
you guys have the mission, so I
That's
don't want to.
fine, I mean, it's semantics to me.
We don't care
but
about the name, we just want to make sure we can do it.
Okay,
We can do whatever,
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
I know what he's thinking.
Okay.
It's a different thing
I know
these
what you're
days.
thinking.
Yeah,
I don't understand what he's thinking of
Brian, don't say it.
Oh, okay.
No, go ahead. I mean,
Don't say the other.
Lucky Charm.
Okay, so the motion is to change the name to, Gary said,
The Hanover Enhancement
Enhancement.
Committee.
Okay.
and I'll second the enhancement.
Enhancement.
Hanover
Okay.
Enhancement
So we know.
Committee. Okay,
It's out there.
Who motioned, Gary? Or
Carol. Carol motion, Gary's idea. It's a Greenhold thing. We
Threw him
want
under
that
the
noted.
bus.
They want enhancement.
Okay, there's something about enhancement that they like.
Yeah.
Brian,
We're gonna let you live it down.
Bill doesn't like it.
Okay,
No, I'm gonna have fun with it now.
okay, so we have a motion, a second is Brian. Those in favor of the enhancement? Aye. Any in?
Better not.
you got a visitation. at the
Okay,
Fair
so we
Center.
have,
Oh, no.
most in favor and Gary opposed to his own idea. All right. Motion carries.
I have to go
Public
home and
Safety
count.
Committee.
Oh, gosh.
Public Safety Committee, this is where we're gonna approve where the borough's gonna start selling our own
Brings out
fireworks,
with a bang,
right?
chief.
No.
Yeah,
Hey, real quick, so back at the beginning of July, the State House amended the fireworks law and gave some options. I brought this before Public Safety Committee and asked Solicitor Schultz to look at the law and provide some options. So the basic options were do nothing, go with the amendments that allowed or we could restrict fireworks or totally restrict the fireworks. Put it before the committee and the fact that there's very few places within the borough that anybody could apply with the 150-foot
I don't
requirement
believe there's anywhere that I
of
know
consumer
of.
fireworks and the fire safety concern. It was decided by the committee and voted upon the committee to totally ban consumer fireworks within the borough of Hanover. So
Can we also ban the sale of them?
That was my
Because we're
question.
rather,
Yeah, silly.
it's rather ridiculous to say you can't shoot them off, but
Let's let
we're
our
the only
solicitor weigh on that
place
one.
that sells them.
What's the deal with that?
I can't answer specifically, but I think not.
Really?
I don't think that really
Let's just
was-
deal with the, yeah,
Sort of like the
On
heroin
sale.
problem.
come back to that. if
So
need
so
to.
we enhanced with
Right.
the noise ordinance, but this is a double bang.
We don't,
Totally-
enhance has already been used.
Yeah, so this totally Right. This totally prohibits consumer fireworks in the borough. Now, it does allow for sparklers, snap caps, stuff like that.
All right, I'm good.
Bottle rockets and firecrackers are, I think, the main,
Yeah,
right, okay. So is there a motion to approve that?
so motion.
Second?
Second.
Any comments?
I
No?
just think that it would enhance the borough.
Enhance?
I agree, particularly the
Further
noise
borough
ordinance.
enhancement.
Oh, no.
Gary, would you care to enhance that anymore? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay,
Did we get a second on that enhancement?
Yes.
yes, we did.
sure.
Dory has it. It's already been voted on. You don't get to make another second. It's been enhanced, voted, and retired. All right, reports of council members, civil, council committees, and other public bodies. If anybody has anything to say, they better not. No. Okay, management reports. We're doing good here. Correspondence and information. All right, additional public comment from either the audience or our digital participants.
Last person signed off an hour ago.
Everybody died. Okay,
Pushed everyone away.
Couldn't
item
handle it.
15, may I have a motion to approve adjournment
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
Seconded.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let it be said at 9:11. Thank you all.
I told you I get.
And I happened to see this newsletter,
Oh,
and my wife commented on it
I-
too, which very favorably, which coming from Karen is a big deal.
I'm getting excited. Read that.
Would you tell Valerie and Dory and whoever else did this is like the best one I think we've ever
best
done?
one we've ever seen. Best one we've